It wasn't the shouting that shattered me. It wasn't even the late nights or the suspicious texts she swore were just work stuff. No, the moment everything tilted was so quiet, it almost felt like the world had stopped breathing. We were at this small dinner, just us and a couple of friends, when someone joked about how work husbands are basically real relationships these days. I laughed, just a dry, nervous laugh, and muttered something like, "Guess I should keep an eye on Trevor, huh?" That's when she turned on me. Not just a mild correction, not even an awkward chuckle. She defended him. "Trevor's not like that," she snapped, so sharp that even the clinking of glasses stopped. "You don't even know him, Leo. He's the kind of guy who would have your back, not mock you." And just like that, I wasn't the husband anymore. I was the enemy in the room. My stomach twisted as I tried to swallow the bitterness rising in my throat. I should have let it go. I should have smiled and changed the subject. But instead, I said it. The words that cracked something I don't think I can ever fix. "Maybe I should step aside then, since you seem to think he's better at being your man than I am." The air turned heavy. No one spoke. Marissa stared at me like I had just dug a grave between us and dared her to jump in. I knew I'd gone too far, but it wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was this boiling frustration that she'd rather fight for him than for me. That night, she slept on the couch without a word. And me? I lay awake replaying every glance, every laugh, every Trevor story she'd told me over the last few months. For the first time in our marriage, I wondered if I wasn't crazy, if maybe, just maybe, I was already losing her to someone I didn't even know. The next morning, Marissa acted like nothing had happened. She brewed coffee, hummed to herself, and asked me if I wanted toast, as if she hadn't slept as far from me as possible. I watched her move around the kitchen like I was looking at a stranger, every smile forced, every gesture just a little too casual. I asked her about Trevor, about why she defended him so harshly the night before. She didn't even flinch. "Because you were being unfair," she said, buttering her toast like we were having the most ordinary conversation. "He's a good person. You don't know what he's like." Something about the way she said "you don't know" made my stomach knot. I started noticing the little things after that. Her phone, which used to be carelessly left on the counter, was now glued to her hand or face down on the table. She was suddenly dressing differently for work. Nothing inappropriate, but a little more effort, a little more shine. It wasn't just me who noticed either. One night when I was out with my brother, I mentioned it offhand, and he gave me this look that told me I wasn't imagining things. "You sure everything's cool with her?" he asked. I brushed him off, but his words stuck. A week later, I did something I'm not proud of. She was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I told myself I was just going to glance, just to put my own mind at ease. It was a message from Trevor. "Don't forget, tonight's just for us. I'm looking forward to it." My heart didn't just sink. It plummeted like a stone through water. I didn't even know what "tonight" meant, but it wasn't work-related, and it wasn't innocent. When she came out of the bathroom, towel in her hair, humming to herself, I couldn't even look at her. She noticed. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, laughing like I was being dramatic again. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone at her and demand the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed it. I smiled and said, "Nothing. I'm fine." And that was the moment I realized how far gone I was. I was scared. Scared of losing her. Scared of what I'd find if I pushed too hard. That night, she told me she was going to a team dinner. I just nodded. I didn't even ask where. But I waited. I stayed up, every hour crawling by, every sound outside making my chest tighten. She came home late, way past midnight, and the smell of someone else's cologne clung to her like a secret I wasn't supposed to know. That was when I decided, if I didn't start digging, I'd lose my mind. And what I found in the next few days made me question not just her, but everything I thought I knew about our marriage. I don't even know when I crossed the line from suspicious husband to full-blown investigator, but once I started, I couldn't stop. The night she came home smelling like a mix of whiskey and someone else's cologne, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying that text message from Trevor over and over. "Tonight's just for us." My chest was tight, my thoughts spiraling, and I knew I had to do something, anything, to find out the truth. The worst part? A tiny part of me hoped I was wrong, hoped I was just losing my mind, and there was a perfectly innocent explanation. But deep down, I knew better. The next day, when Marissa said she'd be working late again, I decided to test her story. I told her I was going to grab dinner with my brother, but instead, I parked my car 2 blocks from her office and waited. I felt like a lunatic, hunched down in my seat with my hoodie up, checking the time every 2 minutes. The office lights flickered off just after 9. A group of employees spilled out onto the sidewalk, laughing and saying goodbyes. And there she was, in her tailored coat and heels, looking like she belonged in a movie. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't alone. Trevor came out right behind her. He wasn't just some random guy from work. He looked like the type of man who knows his own charm, the type who thinks every woman is already halfway in love with him. I watched as he touched her arm lightly, while saying something that made her laugh. That laugh, it wasn't the laugh she gave me anymore. This one was different, brighter, sharper, like she wanted him to hear it. They didn't head to their cars. Instead, they walked down the street together, side by side, too close to just be colleagues. My hands were shaking so hard on the steering wheel that I almost dropped my phone trying to take a picture. And then I stopped. What was I doing? Was I really going to start collecting evidence like some heartbroken detective? But I couldn't drive away. I followed them, slowly, carefully, until they reached this small, dimly lit restaurant. I parked half a block away and just sat there, watching them through the window as they slid into a booth across from each other. She leaned in. He leaned closer. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't need to. The way she looked at him told me more than words ever could. I must have sat there for over an hour, my stomach churning, my mind running through every memory of us. Every argument, every late-night talk, every smile that I thought belonged only to me. When she finally left the restaurant, it was with that same glow on her face. I drove home like a ghost, parked in the driveway, and just sat there in the dark until she walked in. "Hey," she said casually, hanging her coat. "Did you have fun with your brother?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her I knew, but I couldn't. Instead, I nodded and muttered, "Yeah, it was fine." My voice cracked, and she didn't even notice. That was the worst part, how easily she could lie to me without a flicker of guilt. That night, while she slept peacefully next to me, I stared at her and realized something terrifying. I wasn't just afraid of losing her anymore. I was afraid of the truth. What if she'd already chosen him? What if I was the last to know that our marriage had been over for months? The next day, I decided I wouldn't just sit in silence anymore. I needed answers, even if they destroyed me. The day after I followed them, everything felt heavier. Every glance from Marissa felt like a test, every word like a lie wrapped in silk. I tried to act normal, but I'm not good at pretending. I burned my toast, forgot my keys, and spilled coffee on my shirt all before noon. She noticed, of course. "You're distracted," she said with that distant tone, as if she wasn't even talking to me anymore, but to some version of me she barely recognized. "Work's just stressful." I lied, and I hated myself for it. I hated that I was lying to cover up her lies. That evening, I told her I had to stay late at the office. I didn't. I parked down the street from her company again. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Maybe confirmation of what I'd already seen, or maybe I just needed to feel the ground beneath my suspicions. Around 7:30, I saw her leave the building. My heart pounded like I was doing something illegal, even though all I was guilty of was caring too much. This time, she didn't meet Trevor at the door. Instead, she walked to a coffee shop around the corner, pulling out her phone as she waited in line. I couldn't see her screen, but I could see her smile, soft and private, the kind of smile she used to save just for me. I felt my chest tighten until I couldn't breathe. She sat down at a table with her latte, and a few minutes later, Trevor walked in. They didn't hug or kiss, nothing that would scream affair, but the way they looked at each other, like the rest of the world didn't exist, was worse than anything physical. I left before I could watch more. I didn't want to see her laughing with him, leaning in like she used to with me. I drove aimlessly for almost an hour, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Finally, I stopped in front of an old bar near the highway, the kind of place with sticky floors and warm beer, and sat there with my head in my hands, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do. When I finally got home, she was already there, sitting on the couch with a blanket over her legs and a glass of wine in her hand, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled as if nothing had happened. "How was work?" she asked. I stood there for a moment, staring at her like she was someone I didn't know anymore. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Finally, I just muttered, "Fine," and walked past her. In the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw. A man unraveling. A man afraid. Later that night, when she was asleep, I picked up her phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking. I knew her passcode. Of course I did, but I hesitated for a long moment before entering it. What I found wasn't what I expected. There weren't any flirty messages, no obvious confessions. But there was something worse, a string of deleted conversations with Trevor. I could see the gaps in the chat history, like whole chapters of a book ripped out. It was deliberate. She was hiding something from me. I sat on the edge of the bed, the glow of the screen on my face, and I felt this deep, hollow ache in my chest. It wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was the realization that she'd built an entire world that I wasn't part of. I put the phone back, careful not to wake her, and I lay there all night staring at the ceiling. By morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for her to confess. I was going to dig until I found the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next few days were like living inside a bad dream that I couldn't wake up from. Everything Marissa did suddenly felt rehearsed, like she was performing the role of a wife rather than being my wife. She'd kiss me goodbye in the morning, but her lips barely touched mine, just a quick brush, like she was rushing through a script she didn't believe in anymore. At dinner, she'd ask how my day went, but her eyes would drift to her phone, waiting for that buzz that meant more to her than anything I had to say. I started to hate the silence between us. It wasn't the comfortable silence we used to share when words weren't necessary. Now it felt like a wall, thick and cold, cutting me off from her. I tried confronting her again, casually, without letting on that I'd been watching her. "You've been spending a lot of time with Trevor lately," I said one night, my voice low but steady. She didn't even look up from her glass of wine. "He's part of my team, Leo. It's called work. Not everything is about you." That stung more than I expected. I wanted to argue, to push her, but the exhaustion in her tone made me feel like I was just digging myself deeper into some hole I couldn't climb out of. Instead, I turned my suspicion into a mission. I started checking our shared credit card statements. That's when I saw it. A payment for a boutique hotel just outside the city. A single room. The charge had been made the same night she'd told me she was at a team-building dinner. My heart sank into my stomach. I remember sitting there, staring at that line on the statement like if I looked hard enough, it would rewrite itself into something innocent. It didn't. I didn't ask her about it. I couldn't. Instead, I started looking at her differently, noticing things I'd missed before. The way she'd smile at her phone and quickly set it face down when I walked into the room. The sudden urge she had to shower the second she came home from work. The faint smell of a cologne that definitely wasn't mine lingering on her jacket. Each sign was a nail in the coffin, and I kept hammering them in with my own denial. One Friday night, I told her I had plans with my brother again. I didn't. I followed her car from a distance, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. She drove to the city, parked near that same boutique hotel, and walked inside with her phone pressed to her ear. I waited for 20 minutes, maybe longer. It felt like forever, and then Trevor appeared from the corner, casual as anything, and followed her in. My chest tightened like I couldn't take in air. I wanted to storm inside, confront them, scream at her, scream at him. But I didn't. I sat there gripping the steering wheel until my nails dug into my palms, just staring at the door, like maybe she'd walk back out, and this would all make sense. She didn't. They didn't. That night, I drove home and sat in the driveway for an hour, the car engine humming softly while my thoughts tore me apart. I felt like I was splitting in two. The part of me that wanted the truth and the part of me that was terrified of what that truth would look like. When she came home later, hours later, she smiled at me like everything was normal. That smile broke something in me. I think that was the night I realized that if I didn't get real answers soon, I'd lose my mind. I decided I wasn't just going to wait for the truth to reveal itself. I was going to take it, piece by piece, even if it burned me alive in the process. I couldn't keep living like a ghost haunting my own life. Every day I woke up next to Marissa, but it felt like I was waking up beside a stranger who had already left me in every way that mattered. I needed to know for sure, to see it with my own eyes, even if the truth would destroy me. So I started planning. If she was really sneaking around with Trevor, I would catch them, no matter how insane it made me look. That week, I went out and bought a small voice recorder and a cheap GPS tracker. I felt like I was losing my mind, like I was about to cross a line that normal people don't even consider, but I justified it by telling myself she'd already crossed it first. Late at night, while she was asleep, I slipped the tracker under her car. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I hated myself for doing it, but I hated the not knowing even more. The next few days were a slow torture. I'd refresh the app on my phone every hour, watching her little blue dot move around the city. Most of the time, she was exactly where she said she'd be, at the office, at the grocery store, at the gym. But Thursday night was different. She told me she was working late on a presentation and would be home by 10. At 8:47 p.m., her cars started moving, not toward her office, but toward that same damn boutique hotel. My blood ran cold. I didn't think. I just grabbed my keys and drove. My whole body was shaking as I parked a block away. I sat there for 10 minutes, watching the front door, my heart pounding like a war drum. And then I saw them, Marissa and Trevor, walking out of the hotel lobby like they'd just stepped out of a dream. He said something that made her laugh, and she tilted her head toward him the way she used to with me, when we were still happy. I felt something inside me snap, but I didn't go up to them. I couldn't. Maybe I was scared of what I'd say, or maybe I was scared that she'd look me in the eye and confirm every fear I had. So I waited until they drove off, then I went inside. I walked up to the front desk, my voice steady but my hands clenched. "My wife just checked in here," I said. "She left something important in the room. I need the number." The clerk hesitated, but I must have looked desperate enough because after a few minutes, he handed me a spare key. I wish I hadn't gone in. I wish I could erase the memory of that room from my mind. It wasn't anything obvious, no torn clothes or lipstick-stained sheets, but it smelled like them. Her perfume, his cologne, mixed together. There was a wine glass on the table with a smudge of her lipstick, and another glass beside it. I just stood there in the middle of the room, my heart breaking in silence, knowing this was the proof I'd been looking for. When I got home, she was already there, curled up on the couch like nothing had happened. She smiled at me, that warm, practiced smile, and asked how my night was. I wanted to throw it all in her face, the hotel, the glasses, the smell of betrayal. But instead, I just muttered, "Fine," and walked past her. That was the moment I knew something had changed in me. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. The next time she lied to me, I decided I'd be ready. I wouldn't just follow her. I'd confront her with every piece of evidence I had. The next week felt like a countdown to something I didn't know how to stop. I woke up every morning pretending to be the husband I used to be, making coffee for both of us, asking about her day, smiling when she gave me those hollow answers. But underneath, I was seething. I had the evidence, the tracker, the mental images of her and Trevor walking out of that hotel. All of it gnawed at me like rust eating through steel. I kept telling myself that the next time she slipped up, I'd end this charade. But when the moment finally came, I didn't feel prepared. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall. It was a Saturday evening when she told me she had a last-minute team dinner. My chest tightened instantly. I nodded, playing along, even kissed her goodbye at the door like nothing was wrong. The second she left, I grabbed my phone, checked the tracker, and watched her car head toward the city. Not the office, not a restaurant. Straight toward that same boutique hotel. It was like a knife twisting in my gut. This time, I didn't hesitate. I drove after her, faster than I should have, barely noticing the red lights or the rain hitting my windshield. My pulse was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. I parked a street away and walked, my shoes soaking in the puddles, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and dread. When I reached the hotel, I didn't wait in the car like last time. I went inside. The clerk recognized me and gave me the room number with a look I couldn't read, pity, maybe, or judgment. I took the elevator up, every ding of the floor numbers echoing in my head like a countdown. My hands were sweating, my heart beating so fast it felt like I might pass out. And then I was standing in front of the door. Her door. I knocked. There was silence for a moment, then footsteps. The door cracked open just slightly, and I saw her face, startled, pale, like she'd seen a ghost. Behind her, I heard Trevor's voice. "Who is it?" That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, my chest heaving. "Who is it?" "It's your husband." I spat, my voice shaking. "What the hell is going on here?" Marissa froze, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Trevor stood in the corner of the room, casual but tense, like he didn't know whether to intervene or back off. My eyes darted between them, the wine glasses on the table, the crumpled sheets, the smell of her perfume mixed with his cologne. Every piece of evidence screamed at me, but I wanted to hear it from her. I needed her to say it. Leo, you need to calm down, she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. Calm down. I felt like I was burning alive. Don't tell me to calm down, I shouted. How long, Marissa? How long have you been doing this behind my back? While I'm sitting at home like an idiot, you're here with him? Trevor stepped forward slightly, and I swear I almost lost it. Maybe we should all take a breath, he started, but I cut him off with a glare that could have killed. Don't you dare talk to me. You've had enough of my wife already. Marissa's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the kind of tears that begged for forgiveness. No, these were tears of frustration, of someone who's already made their choice. That realization hit me harder than any punch could. She wasn't fighting for us. She wasn't even trying. I didn't want you to find out like this, she whispered. But maybe this marriage has been over for a long time, Leo. You just didn't see it. Those words gutted me. Over? I felt like the floor had dropped out beneath my feet. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to tell me she didn't mean it. But she didn't. She just stood there, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and resolve. And in that moment, I realized that no amount of yelling, crying, or begging was going to fix what had already been broken beyond repair. I left without another word. I didn't trust myself to speak. I walked down that hallway, into the elevator, and out into the rain like a man who had just lost everything, because maybe I had. But as I sat in my car, drenched and shaking, something inside me shifted. Maybe I hadn't lost everything. Maybe I'd just been holding on to something that was never really mine anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch in the dark, replaying every memory of us, every laugh, every fight, every kiss. It hurt so much that I thought I'd drown in it. But somewhere around 5 a.m., as the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, clarity. For so long, I had been chasing her, clinging to a version of our marriage that no longer existed. But maybe this wasn't the end of me. Maybe this was the start of something I hadn't allowed myself to see. Marissa came home around noon, her hair pulled back, eyes tired, as if she'd been crying. For a moment, we just stood there, staring at each other like two people who had loved and hurt each other in equal measure. I expected anger, yelling, maybe one last fight. But instead, she just whispered, "Leo, I'm sorry." And for the first time, I didn't feel like screaming. I just nodded. "I know," I said quietly. "But this isn't us anymore, is it?" She shook her head, tears rolling down her face. We sat on the couch together, talking for hours, really talking, like we hadn't in years. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about truth. She admitted that things with Trevor had started as harmless fun, but turned into something more because she felt like we'd lost each other. I admitted that I had seen the distance growing, but had been too afraid to face it. In the end, we both knew what we needed to do. We didn't scream, we didn't throw things, we didn't hate each other. We simply agreed to let go. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but deep down, I knew it was the right thing. A few weeks later, I moved out. At first, the silence of my new apartment was unbearable. But slowly, I started rediscovering pieces of myself I'd forgotten. I reconnected with old friends, took long walks at night, even started sketching again, a hobby I'd abandoned years ago. I wasn't healed overnight, but I was finally breathing without feeling like I was drowning. And here's the twist I never expected. Letting her go turned out to be the thing that saved me. I realized that love isn't about clinging to something that's already broken. It's about knowing when to let go, even if it hurts like hell. Last week, Marissa called me. Not to get back together, not to apologize again, but just to thank me for being honest in the end. She said Trevor didn't work out, but that wasn't what the call was about. She told me she'd learned a lot about herself and about what she'd lost with me. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt free. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I'm not the same man I was when all of this started. I'm stronger now. And I've finally learned that sometimes the worst heartbreaks lead to the best kind of freedom.